Hi, this is Jar Citizen Gamer. Once again, with me is my bastion of common sense, LightningDragon. Now, my bastion of common sense with technical difficulties, LightningDragon.
It is a wonderful day to be me. I actually have another TV in my room now. So I have a 32-inch television and a 26-inch television. So my room is extremely hot.
You're living the dream. You're
Yeah,
living
and
the dream.
the other one's like 720p, so it's an older monitor, or it's an older television, so
Yeah.
it doesn't really work with TV. Or fucking, I can't
Doesn't
speak.
doesn't work with computer games too well. I know
It doesn't work with computers very well.
when my last monitor broke, I had to use a 720p for my basically the monitor didn't break, the stand broke, and I ended up with a screen in my lap. So I completely, after so many moves, the thing just kind of went. So anyway, this is our third podcast, and today this is kind of a theory crafting podcast, and just want to put some ideas out there. But one of the things that, as I've been looking at ship stats, not the ones on the ship page per se, but when people look at the breakdowns of ship hit points and things like that, it seems that there's a wild inconsistency across the board. And I've already talked to Lightning a little bit about this, so he has an idea. Not going to pop a surprise on him like last week, but basically what we're looking at here is how do we get hit points to be on a ship to be more universal, or have a sense that you can actually predict what a ship's hit points are going to be. And I think I have a relatively simple and elegant solution. I'm going to use big round numbers just to kind of keep it simple, and kind of go from there. But what my general thought is that, let's just say the ship weighs 10,000 pounds or whatever, 10,000 kilograms.
You might as well just say it's 1,000 tons, because when you're talking about Star Citizen, they use kilograms, so you drop off a zero and it's metric tons.
All right, well, whatever. Let's just say it weighs, let's just say it weighs 10,000 then. Let's just, whatever metric you want to use. And the thing is that, so basically you say, okay, this ship has a base value of 10,000 hit points, and of course there'd be a multiplier in there. You could say that the universal multiplier is something like 10%, so it has 1,000 hit points. Or you could say it's 50%, so it has 5,000 hit points, or whatever. But basically you create a universal multiplier, and it's applied to the ship, so that when you have larger ships, anywhere from something like an M50 all the way up to a Bengal carrier, you can look at the hit points on what the total hit points of the ship is, and then basically within that can break it off in a grid, like this, so many hit points in every area of the ship. And as those hit points are depleted in that area, let's just say you have 10,000 and you have 1,000 boxes, okay, in there, and it's basically, you're looking at 10 hit points per box.
1,000 hit points.
Well, I'm just going with the 10,000 for now. Just keeping it simple, because I don't want to confuse everyone with mass amount of math and they don't have a pad and paper handy.
Well, if you have 10 parts and you have 10,000 hit points, wouldn't that be 1,000 hit points per part?
Well, whatever we're coming out to. So basically, what it is that whatever size grid you come out to, how many boxes, if it's 1,000 boxes, or if it's 100 boxes, basically the hit point total is divided by the area in that grid. And as an area is hit and that area goes to zero, basically the systems underneath can become exposed, and that means that at that point in time you're hitting into subsystems. And when it comes to armor and things placed over those locations, that would have a natural damage resistance. So if they have a 50% damage resistance, effectively speaking, obviously it takes double the damage before those systems become exposed. Now,
which is, I think, what we talked about earlier. But
yeah.
The easiest way to do that when you're applying armor is not to just say armor adds X amount more hit points, because then you're just dealing with larger and larger numbers, which is more math to calculate.
Right.
The easiest thing to do would be to add it's 4 lines in your code, basically, that says, it has armor, and you take off a certain percentage of how much damage done, like 0.5.
Right, and that goes towards another video I'm working on, which should be about personal weapons versus ship scale weapons. But this is all kind of comes together. This kind of bleeds together, because once you've established a universal hit point system, and this is just a representation, if you want to think of it as the hit points are a representation of the total hull. There's only so much space on a ship. Now you can even have something go the other way. If you have a ship that is intentionally, let's say, built thinner or lighter, let's just use the M50. That's a perfect example. They like to advertise even in that commercial that it's made to be the bare minimums, just to make it as fast as possible.
Yeah,
so
it's about making it as thin as possible so you're closer to space or whatever.
Exactly. So in that case, the hull value might actually have a different multiplier going down just on the default because it's made to be very thin. It's not a combat-oriented ship. It's a racer. It's built intentionally lighter. So you can have a multiplier in that just because of that. And of course, you're countering that by its speed and maneuverability, or you can just ignore that completely and just keep everything universal, just to keep it simple. And I could definitely understand going that route, because as small as it is, it's not going to have many hit points anyway. The good thing about establishing a universal hit point system is that once you've established that, you can set your baseline ship. Let's just use the Hornet, because they like to use that as the baseline for a lot of things, for speed and for everything else. Once you've established the baseline, now you can more readily establish a baseline for weapon damage. So say you want to have your time to kill. For this class weapon, continual fire against a Hornet that has this many hit points based on this formula, then you can say, then this weapon needs to have this much DPS in order to obtain that 15 seconds kill. And so everything starts to come around, your weapon balance, your ship hull balance, all that starts to kind of piece together into a kind of a complete package. And it removes a lot of the arbitrary values that sometimes I feel that they're testing things. They're trying to come up with some sort of a sense of balance, but
Can't really balance a game like this.
Can't balance a game with arbitrary values.
You can balance the game to itself, basically, and by that you have a baseline. And
Yeah.
This is actually kind of funny because I've actually been working on like a card game, which is completely unrelated. But in that game, you establish a baseline. What is the middle of the road? And you figure out, okay, well, if this is the middle of the road, then as far as hit points go, then your damage needs to be about this.
Right.
And then you scale up and down from there. But going slightly off topic, Star Citizen wants a 15-second to kill time?
No, that was just throwing out a number.
Oh, okay. I'm like, holy crap, that's awful.
Well, I mean, that would be based on continual fire. Like, I was just throwing, like if the guy never moved and his ship was parked and you just kept shooting him, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I meant what I know what you meant.
Yeah.
It's kind of like 15 seconds. That's terrible. I mean, fucking War Thunder is like 2 seconds sometimes. It's like, got hit by a cannon fire. I'm dead.
Yeah, well, it's all relative to what's hitting you versus what's being hit. But I was just throwing that out. And another thing too, we're dealing with if you do add-on armor later. Say if a ship doesn't have, like, you can buy and attach armor plates. That won't go into the ship's total hit points, but that armor layering will go on there and have its own weight, its own value, its own hit points, its own resistance, and that would be
trading maneuverability for
right.
Armor.
Well, also as that armor is depleted, because you know how much mass is in an area. As armor is depleted, you're losing. First the armor goes, then you're hitting into the hull, and as the armor goes or being shot off, your weight's being reduced, and it's changing the dynamics and physics of it. So you basically created a couple layers, the external added armor to the ship, which can be shot off, and this is also important as well, especially since they've announced planets, and if they do atmospheric flight mechanics. Think about the fact that a lot of these ships have wings. If your wing is taken 60% wing damage, you got holes in your wings and whatnot, you could say, okay, you've got a grid laid out. I've lost 60% of my left wing. The lift on my left wing is reduced by 60%. And in that particular case, you may, if the ship has wings that retract, you may want to just pull them back in and try to use thrusters instead. There's a lot of depth that can come from something like this, where you have different locales on the ship that are going to be affected in different ways. Once you've laid out a grid and you have an idea of how much an area can sustain and what the effects are therein, instead of just kind of looking at the way they do with arbitrary hit points and arbitrary this and arbitrary that. It's very important in any game to establish a baseline for everything, whether it's controls or whether it's weapon damage or ship hull or shields. All these things need to have a baseline, and so that you can apply this scale up or down. Thoughts?
That's pretty much what I said. I
Yeah. See,
mean, that's what you need to do. I mean, it doesn't matter what ship it is. You could make up a ship. You don't even have to have a physical model because you're just looking at numbers. You're looking at data, whatever. And all you have to do is just say, what do we want the average HP of a ship to be? So you look at what's in the game, like right now. You look at the
right.
M50, it has X amount of hit points. You look at the Super Hornet, it has X amount of hit points. So you figure, okay, so the average is whatever is here. Now you need to look at your guns, because now you look at the weakest gun to the most powerful gun, you get the average number of that, and you realize, is this a good ratio? And then you scale from there, and then because you started in the middle, you just retroactively go over every ship afterwards, or every gun afterwards, and figure it out. And with ships, honestly, it'd probably be a lot easier, because you're just really looking at how much total hit points is it, and then you kind of divide it out to individual pieces. With guns, you have to look at how much damage they do per shot. You have to look at how much damage they do per thing, if it's
Right.
hitting armor or if it's hitting shields. You have to look at what type of it it's firing, like energy or physical, which is
Well,
kind of the second one, and the rate of fire.
and that brings up a good point. You're dealing with some of these the guns that they don't shoot very fast, but they have big hits, and that could be an advantage or disadvantage. Now, let's say like you have a ship with a really powerful hit. It could hit the hull, penetrate the hull, hit the subsystem beneath it. It doesn't have a lot of quick pew pew, but it's a penetrating shot now with the system. And like you could hit, like say, hit a wing, it'll hit the wing, hit the top layer, go through, hit the bottom layer, go out the other side. And what this also kind of creates in a sense is that if you go back to if people are old enough to remember the original Top Gun movie, during the dogfight scene in the last, he gets shot when the engines goes out, and then he gets shot again, and then they say, "Oh, it's okay, it hit the same engine because the engine was out, hit the same engine again, didn't matter because that engine's already screwed anyway." So the same kind of thing, you're dealing with, the best that Bolt's going to do is going to continue going through that broken engine and try to come out the other side, and you kind of create this, like when I played IL-2, one of the great things about it was the damage engine is that you could be behind somebody, shoot them, and then like, okay, I hit them. My bullet went through the tail. It severed the cable. It went through and it hit the engine, cracked the engine block, and you got oil spewing everywhere. And now you've got, so it's like the bullet has this continual sense of piercing and where it's going through and what it's doing. And in a sense, these heavy hitting weapons can be replicated. That kind of effect can be replicated within those. And a lot of the faster, lighter hitting shot weapons, in a sense, they would mar the surface of the ship brutally, but it would take more shots to punch a hole directly through that ship.
And that's where the rate of fire comes into play. So
Right.
you're going to try and be about, we want X amount of damage to be dealt. Either it's done all up in front and there's a long cooldown, or you have it where it does very little damage, but you have a high rate of fire, so you kind of bring it all into the center line. Because
Right.
then at that point, all weapons are more or less balanced in themselves. And
Right.
if you've balanced how much damage they do for how much hit points the ships are, then the only thing it really comes down to is, what weapons do I enjoy firing the most? Me personally, I'm kind of a light to medium rapid fire kind of thing. I would personally do lasers, because if you're in a long dogfight, and like for World War Thunder, for an example, you have like cannon rounds. Let's use the P-38 for an example. The
Right.
P-38 had a 20 millimeter cannon, but it only had 50 rounds of that cannon. So you had to make those shots count. Well, then you had 50 caliber machine guns, which they were decent, but they weren't cannons. They're bigger than like the 7.62 stuff that was pretty common in some of the other airplanes. But you had a lot more. I think it was like 2,000 50 caliber rounds, between
Yeah.
1,000 and 2,000, and so you could line up your big shot kind of based off the 50 caliber rounds.
Yeah. Use it.
But
Use it kind of like
eventually,
tracers.
yeah, but eventually you run out of that cam ammunition. So if you think of the 50 calibers as lasers, and the 20 millimeter cannon as your big physical weapon, eventually you're going to run out of that big physical weapon. So if all you have is very, very light machine guns, or lasers in this case, you're going to be kind of, up shit creek if you run out of ammunition too
Right.
soon.
And this actually brings in a point you just kind of popped into my head. This is really effective when you especially that grid system and the damage, especially if you think about missiles. A missile hitting the hull, it's going to have an explosion radius,
AoE,
and
yeah.
and you can say the damage is this from the center, and how it weakens as it goes out. So a missile hitting a ship, the damage to the ship could be more accurately modeled based upon the damage it's doing to not only the panels going out from the center, but also going into the ship. And so, effectively speaking, how effective a missile hit is going to be blowing a hole through a ship or blowing a part off the ship, because where it hits the grid, how hard it pushes through, and it creates a situation that a lot of the damage may just dissipate, because if it hits like the tip of a wing, right, you may lose half your wing from the outside in, but it's not just a flat hit point system in that regard. So like, in a sense, the hit points aren't treated as flat hit points in this case. You're looking at just like, oh, it's going to spread out, and then okay, you've lost half your wing, and then you singed some of the hull. I think overall it adds to the damage engine that they're trying to build, and I don't know. As I said, I played a lot of games. I played a lot of flight games and simulators. I think this is a very doable idea, and this is just theory crafting. I'm not the end-all, be-all, and this is why we have the comment sections, folks. So feel free to leave comments down below and talk about this. I mean, you see problems with this kind of implementation? Do you have your own thoughts on the matter? Would you like to see something like this? And
Now that you bring up some of this locational damage, it reminds me of another game. You might not have seen this, and probably a lot of the people that are like watching the video might not have seen this either. It's called Aurora 4X, or just Aurora, and it basically does every single thing we're talking about.
haven't seen it.
You haven't seen it, or you
No.
have?
No, I haven't seen it at all. I've seen some
Okay,
videos.
so yeah, it's
but I haven't seen it,
basically-
watched
it's a spreadsheet game because it goes
Okay.
into so much detail about this that you wouldn't have a computer in the world that could actually play it as 3D. Like the missiles, for example, you're talking
Right.
about how they have AoE.
Mhm.
In that one, the factor of your warhead, the higher it is,
Right.
the wider the explosion and the
Right.
deeper the explosion. And
Exactly.
It's factors of
The
4.
kind of missile. I mean, is the explosion set to just blow up and out like a ball, or is it set to shock and blow in and forward? I mean, there's different kinds of explosions on different kinds of missiles. So does it penetrate first and then explode, causing damage from within? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. There's a depth here that can be added to these weapons. So once again, guys, we don't take this too long because long videos get to be obnoxious. I know that. So leave comments down below. If there's something that you want us to discuss, or if there's an aspect of the game that you are unsatisfied with or think could be improved upon, leave a comment or contact me on Twitter. I would love to go ahead and be very interactive with the community and discuss things, because we get ideas out there. This is only going to help make Star Citizen the best game it can possibly be, and if as alpha testers, that's on us. And if we don't give feedback or give them ideas, we're not really doing our job.
We're gonna have Freelancer 2.
Essentially speaking, yes.
And we don't want Freelancer 2, and that
No.
wasn't what was pitched.
Exactly. We want something a little bit deeper, and we can get depth in all sorts of different directions. So once again, this is Jarvis, Citizen Gamer, and ever-present LightningDragon. And we'll be signing off, and hopefully LightningDragon will be getting a new computer. That's kidding.
Yeah, right. Bye-bye, everybody.
All right, bye.